When a dying stranger's broken-down car forces a exhausted single father to make an impossible choice on a rain-soaked highway, he has no idea that one act of mercy will detonate his entire life. Within 24 hours, Ethan Cross will lose everything he's worked for, publicly humiliated, jobless, watching his daughter's future crumble. But the old man he saved wasn't helpless. He was watching. And when the truth explodes inside that diner, every person who chose cruelty over compassion will learn that karma doesn't wait. It arrives in a black sedan with tinted windows. If you stay until the end, you'll witness justice so perfect it'll give you chills. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels tonight. The rain came down like nails. Ethan Cross gripped the steering wheel of his '98 Ford pickup, knuckles white against cracked leather, eyes burning from 12 straight hours on his feet. The digital clock on the dashboard blinked 11:47 p.m. in angry red numbers. His lower back screamed, his feet throbbed inside worn sneakers that had given up arch support somewhere around month 9. The smell of fryer grease clung to his hair, his clothes, probably his skin by now. He just wanted home, wanted to collapse into bed, wanted 6 hours of unconsciousness before doing it all over again. But the universe, as it often did, had other plans. The headlights caught it first. A dark shape hulked on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking weakly through the downpour. As Ethan's truck drew closer, details emerged. A sedan, expensive-looking even through the rain-blurred windshield, hood propped open, white smoke billowing into the storm. And beside it, barely visible, a figure hunched against the elements. Ethan's foot moved toward the brake, then hesitated. "Keep driving," whispered the exhausted part of his brain. "Not your problem. You've got Mia waiting. You've got work in 7 hours. You've got nothing left to give." His truck rolled past. The rearview mirror caught the scene shrinking behind him, that lone figure, that smoking car, that plea for help dissolving into darkness and rain. 3 seconds. That's how long his conscience lasted. Ethan's jaw clenched. His hands turned the wheel before his mind fully approved the decision. The truck's tires crunched gravel as he pulled a U-turn, headlights sweeping back toward the stranded vehicle. Sarah would have stopped, he thought, and immediately wished he hadn't. The memory hit like it always did, sudden, sharp, stealing his breath. Sarah, his wife, 3 years gone, taken by a drunk driver on a night not much different from this one. She'd been coming home from her nursing shift. Someone else's bad choices. Someone else's mistake. And Ethan's whole world had shattered across 6 lanes of interstate. He pulled up behind the sedan, put the truck in park, and killed the engine. Rain drummed against the roof like 1,000 impatient fingers. Through the windshield, he could see the figure more clearly now. An older man, 70-something, in what had probably been an expensive suit before the rain soaked through it. The man's silver hair was plastered to his skull. He looked miserable. He looked helpless. He looked exactly like someone who needed help. Ethan grabbed the emergency poncho from behind the seat, a ratty yellow thing Mia had decorated with permanent marker flowers last summer, and pushed open the truck door. The rain hit him immediately, cold and mean, finding every gap in his clothing within seconds. "Hey!" Ethan called, jogging toward the man. "You all right?" The stranger turned, and Ethan saw it in his eyes. That particular shade of relief that comes when you've been standing in the rain long enough to forget what dry feels like. The man was trembling, either from cold or age, or both. Thank you," the man said, voice rough. "I didn't think anyone would stop." "Most people wouldn't," Ethan admitted, draping the poncho over the man's shoulders. It was too small, but better than nothing. "Engine trouble?" "I'm not sure. It just started smoking, and I'm not very good with cars." The man's hands shook as he pulled the poncho tighter. "I tried calling for a tow, but there's no service out here." Ethan glanced at the sedan. Even in the dark, even covered in rain, he could tell it was high-end. Mercedes, maybe. The kind of car that cost more than Ethan made in 2 years. The kind of car that belonged to someone who probably had roadside assistance and a warm house waiting and people who gave a damn. But right now, that didn't matter. Right now, the man was just cold and wet and stranded. "You got someplace nearby?" Ethan asked. "Someone you can call once we get to where there's cell service?" The man hesitated. I... No. I was driving back from a business meeting and I'm not from around here. Hotel? I hadn't arranged anything yet. I thought I'd make it home tonight, but he gestured helplessly at the smoking engine. Ethan ran the calculations in his head. The nearest town with a decent hotel was 40 minutes back the way he'd come. The nearest 24-hour tow service was probably twice that. His apartment was 15 minutes ahead. Mia was with Mrs. Chen next door, had been since 5 p.m., probably asleep by now. This was the smart moment to drive the man to town, drop him at a hotel, wish him well, and go home. Sarah's voice whispered in his memory. When did we start measuring kindness by convenience? Look, Ethan said, I've got a couch. It's not much, but it's dry and warm. You can crash there tonight, and in the morning when the rain stops, we'll get your car sorted. The man stared at him like Ethan had just offered him a kidney. You could possibly freeze to death out here, Ethan interrupted, or catch pneumonia, or get hit by some idiot driving too fast in the rains. So, yeah, you could possibly take the couch. For a long moment, the only sound was rain beating against metal and pavement. The man's eyes searched Ethan's face, looking for what? Ulterior motives? Signs of danger? Whatever he found must have satisfied him because his shoulders sagged in surrender. Thank you, he said quietly. Truly, I don't even know your name. Ethan Cross. He stuck out his hand. The man took it. His grip was firm despite the trembling. Graham Whitaker. Something about the name tickled the back of Ethan's mind, but exhaustion had turned his brain to sludge. He probably just reminded Ethan of some customer at the diner. Nice to meet you, Graham. Now let's get out of this rain before we both need hospitalization. They locked up the sedan, Graham retrieving a small overnight bag from the trunk, and climbed into Ethan's truck. The heater rattled to life, blasting lukewarm air that smelled like old French fries and broken dreams. Graham didn't complain. He just sat there, hands pressed against the vents, eyes closed in silent gratitude. Ethan pulled back onto the highway. The rain showed no signs of letting up. His headlights carved tunnels through the darkness, revealing nothing but wet asphalt and the occasional reflective road sign. You must think I'm pathetic, Graham said suddenly. A grown man. Can't even handle a simple breakdown. I think you're human, Ethan replied. Stuff happens. Cars break, rain falls. None of us are as in control as we pretend to be. Graham glanced at him. That sounds like experience talking. Yeah, well. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. Life's got a way of teaching lessons whether you want them or not. They drove in silence for a while. The truck's tires hissed against wet pavement. The radio crackled with static. Ethan had given up on fixing the antenna months ago. Outside, the world was reduced to darkness, rain, and the occasional blur of trees rushing past. You have family? Graham asked. Someone waiting for you. A daughter, Mia. She's 6. Ethan couldn't help the smile that crept into his voice. She's with my neighbor right now, probably having a better night than I am. Just the two of you? The question landed like a fist in Ethan's chest. Yeah, just us. Graham heard something in those words. The weight, the history, the pain compressed into 3 syllables. To his credit, he didn't push. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her, Ethan corrected. Some days she's the only reason I remember how to keep going. The apartment complex appeared through the rain like a mirage. 3 stories of beige siding, half the exterior lights burned out, landscaping that had surrendered to weeds years ago. Ethan's building was the middle one, his unit on the 2nd floor. He parked in his assigned spot, number 247, faded paint barely visible, and killed the engine. Home sweet home, he said without irony. This place might not be much, but it was theirs. Every dent in the wall had a story. Every stain on the carpet was a memory. It was where Mia had taken her first steps after Sarah died, where Ethan had cried himself to sleep for the first 6 months, where they'd slowly, painfully, learned to be a family of 2 instead of 3. They made a run for it, Graham clutching his overnight bag, both of them splashing through puddles that had colonized the parking lot. Ethan fumbled with his keys at the door, finally got it open, and they stumbled into the narrow entryway, dripping on the worn welcome mat. The apartment was small, A living room that bled into a kitchenette, two bedrooms barely bigger than closets, a bathroom with a shower that only had two temperatures, Arctic and scalding. But it was clean. Ethan had learned early that he couldn't control much in life, but he could control whether his daughter grew up in chaos or order. "Bathroom's down the hall," Ethan said, toeing off his soaked sneakers. "There's towels in the cabinet. Help yourself to whatever you need." Graham stood in the living room, still dripping, taking in the details. His eyes caught on the photos arranged on the side table. Mia at various ages, gap-toothed smiles and messy ponytails. And one photo, slightly larger than the others, of a woman with kind eyes and a laugh captured mid-motion. Sarah, forever 32, forever radiant, forever gone. "I'll find you some dry clothes," Ethan said, deliberately not looking at those photos. "Might be a little big, but better than sleeping in wet stuff." He disappeared into his bedroom and emerged with sweatpants and a t-shirt, both worn soft from years of washing. Graham had moved to the window, looking out at the rain-slicked parking lot below. "This is very kind of you," Graham said, accepting the clothes, "especially when you don't know anything about me." "I know you needed help and I could give it," Ethan replied. "That's enough." Graham studied him with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. "Not everyone thinks that way." "Yeah, well, maybe they should." While Graham changed in the bathroom, Ethan checked in with Mrs. Chen, a quick text confirming Mia was asleep and all was well. Then he pulled sheets and a pillow from the hall closet and made up the couch. It wasn't the Ritz, but it was better than a broken-down car in a rainstorm. Graham emerged looking more human, less like a drowned businessman. The sweatpants pooled around his ankles and the t-shirt hung loose, but warmth had returned to his face. "Thank you," he said again. "I don't think I can say it enough." "You can stop trying," Ethan said. "I'm going to grab a shower and crash. There's water in the fridge if you get thirsty. Bathroom's yours if you need it. And if you hear a tiny tornado wake up around 6 a.m., that's just Mia." Graham smiled, the first real smile Ethan had seen from him. "I'll try to be prepared." "Good luck with that. Nobody's ever actually prepared for Mia." Ethan trudged to his bedroom, every muscle in his body staging a protest. The hot shower helped. Not enough, never enough, but it washed away the grease smell and some of the exhaustion. He stood under the spray longer than he should have, letting the water hammer against his shoulders, trying to convince his body that tomorrow wouldn't be just as hard as today. When he finally crawled into bed, his phone showed 1:23 a.m. 5 hours until Mia's alarm. 5.5 until his own. The math was depressing, but at least it was familiar. This was his life now, exhaustion and obligations held together by coffee and stubbornness and the fierce love he had for his daughter. He closed his eyes and let sleep drag him under. The next thing he knew, small hands were shaking his shoulder and a familiar voice was stage whispering, "Daddy! Daddy! There's a man on our couch!" Ethan's eyes snapped open. Pale morning light filtered through the blinds. Mia stood beside his bed in her unicorn pajamas, eyes wide, hair sticking up in 17 different directions. "It's okay, sweetheart," he mumbled, brain still trying to reconnect with consciousness. "That's Graham. He needed a place to stay last night." "Did you kidnap him?" "What? No. Why would you?" "Connor at school says sometimes grown-ups kidnap other grown-ups for ransom." "Well, Connor at school watches too much TV." Ethan sat up, rubbing his face. "Graham's car broke down and I gave him a ride. That's all." Mia considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. "Is he nice?" "Very nice. But he's probably still sleeping, so let's be quiet, okay?" "Okay." She didn't move, just stood there, studying him with those eyes that were too much like Sarah's, same shade of hazel, same way of looking right through you. "What?" Ethan asked. "Mrs. Chen says you work too hard. Mrs. Chen worries too much. She says you look tired all the time." "That's just my face, baby." Mia frowned. "That's not your face. That's what your face looks like when you're tired." 6 years old and already too smart for her own good. Ethan pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I'm fine, Mia Bean, I promise." "Pinky promise?" He linked his pinky with hers. "Pinky promise." "Okay." She pulled back, satisfied. "Can I have cereal?" "Yes, but quiet cereal. Graham's sleeping. There's no such thing as quiet cereal, Daddy. Cereal is crunchy. Then chew quietly. She gave him a look that clearly communicated her opinion of this instruction, but padded out of the room. Ethan checked his phone. 6:47 a.m. He had 13 minutes before he needed to start getting ready for the diner. He found Mia in the kitchen, balanced on a chair, reaching for the cabinet where they kept the cereal boxes. Graham was still on the couch, seemingly asleep. But Ethan caught the subtle tension in his shoulders that suggested awareness. "Morning," Ethan said quietly. Graham's eyes opened. "Good morning. I hope I didn't—" "You're fine." Ethan moved to help Mia with the cereal, extracting the box from her reach and pouring it into a bowl. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I deserved, given the circumstances." "That's the stranger," Mia announced through a mouthful of cereal. "Daddy saved him from the rain." "Your father is very kind," Graham said, sitting up. The blankets were neatly folded beside him, military precision that spoke of a lifetime of discipline. "He's the kindest," Mia agreed, "except when I don't clean my room. Then he's medium kind." Despite everything, the exhaustion, the early hour, the weirdness of having a stranger on his couch, Ethan laughed. "Medium kind. I can live with that." He made coffee while Mia continued her cereal demolition. Graham excused himself to the bathroom, emerging a few minutes later, looking more put together despite wearing Ethan's oversized clothes. "I should get out of your way," Graham said. "I've imposed enough." "You haven't imposed at all," Ethan replied, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "But I do have to get to work soon. We can swing by your car on the way, see about getting a tow truck out there." "I don't want to make you late." "You won't. The diner's on the way." Ethan handed him one of the mugs. "Besides, can't leave you stranded twice in 12 hours. That's just bad hospitality." They drank their coffee while Mia provided running commentary about everything from the state of her cereal to the weird dream she'd had about talking cats. Graham listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. He was good with kids, Ethan noticed. Natural. Not everyone had that skill. At 7:30, Ethan started hustling Mia through her morning routine, teeth brushed, clothes changed, backpack assembled. Mrs. Chen would take her to school, same as every morning. It was a system they'd developed over the past year, one of the many adjustments to their new normal. "Be good for Mrs. Chen," Ethan said, kneeling to Mia's level by the front door. "And remember, we have that parent-teacher thing next week." "Can we get pizza after?" "If you're good." "I'm always good." "You're always something?" He kissed her forehead. "Love you, Mia Bean." "Love you, Daddy." She turned to Graham, suddenly shy. "Bye, stranger." "Goodbye, Mia. It was lovely meeting you." She gave him a solemn wave, then disappeared out the door with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. The apartment felt instantly quieter without her. Ethan grabbed his wallet and keys, checked that he had his phone. "Ready?" They climbed into the truck, its engine coughing to life on the 3rd try. The rain had stopped overnight, leaving everything washed clean and gray. Steam rose from puddles as early morning sun tried to burn through the clouds. Graham's sedan was where they'd left it, looking sad and abandoned in the daylight. Ethan pulled up behind it while Graham tried to make calls, finally getting reception. A tow truck was dispatched. 30 minutes out, they said. "You don't have to wait," Graham said. "You've already done more than enough." "You sure? I've got a few minutes." "I'm sure." "Go. You'll be late." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "All right. There's a decent hotel about 15 minutes back toward town, the Riverside Inn. They'll probably have rooms available." "Thank you, Ethan, for everything. I won't forget this." They shook hands through the truck window. Graham's grip was firm, his eyes serious. "Just pay it forward sometime," Ethan said. "Help somebody else when they need it." "I will." Ethan pulled back onto the highway, watching in his rearview mirror as Graham became a small figure beside a broken car. Something about the moment felt significant, though Ethan couldn't say why. Maybe it was just the strangeness of the past 12 hours, the randomness of stopping, the vulnerability of inviting a stranger home, the odd intimacy of shared coffee in the early morning. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe sometimes you help people because you can, and that's the whole story, and there doesn't need to be more. The Riverside Diner came into view at 8:17 a.m. a long, low building with chrome accents and windows that hadn't been properly cleaned in months. The parking lot was half full, breakfast rush winding down, the usual mix of truckers and early birds and people with nowhere better to be. Ethan parked and checked his reflection in the rear view mirror. He looked like death warmed over. Dark circles, hair that had dried weird after last night's rain, the general expression of someone running on fumes. You can do this, he told himself. 8 hours, then home, then sleep. You can do 8 hours. He climbed out of the truck, grabbed his apron from behind the seat, and headed for the employee entrance. He had no idea his life was about to detonate. The kitchen hit him with its familiar assault of sounds and smells. Bacon sizzling, coffee percolating, dishes clattering, the industrial dishwasher groaning through another cycle. Maria was already at the grill, her hands moving with the practiced efficiency of 20 years. She glanced up as Ethan entered. "Morning, sunshine," she said. "You look like hammered shit." "Thanks, Maria. Always know just what to say." "I call 'em like I see 'em." She flipped 3 eggs simultaneously without looking. "Derek's been in a mood all morning. Fair warning." Ethan's stomach tightened. Derek Voss, the diner's manager, was the kind of man who confused authority with cruelty. He'd been writing Ethan for months now, looking for reasons to write him up, nitpicking every small mistake. Ethan had learned to just take it. He needed this job too much to fight back. He clocked in, tied his apron, and stepped into the dining room. The breakfast crowd was scattered across the booths and counter, familiar faces mostly. Mr. Peterson reading his newspaper in the corner, the Thompson twins arguing over who got the last piece of bacon, Jenny Martinez nursing her coffee while waiting for her shift to start at the hospital. Normal. Routine. Safe. Derek stood by the register, arms crossed, eyes tracking Ethan's movement like a predator watching prey. He was a big man, 6'2", 250, most of it settling around his midsection in recent years. His face had the ruddy complexion of someone who either drank too much or had blood pressure issues. Probably both. "You're late," Derek said flatly. Ethan glanced at the clock, 8:19. 2 minutes. Late is late. That's the 3rd time this month. It's the 2nd, Ethan wanted to say. And the first time was because Mia had a fever and I had to wait for Mrs. Chen to get there. But he swallowed the words. "It won't happen again." "You're damn right it won't." Derek stepped closer, voice loud enough to carry across the dining room. Several customers looked up from their meals. "You know how many people would kill for this job? How many I got lined up who'd show up on time?" "I understand. I apologize." "You apologize a lot, Cross. Maybe what you need is less apologizing and more actually giving a damn about your responsibilities." Heat crawled up Ethan's neck. Around them, the diner had gone quiet. That particular silence that comes when strangers are pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. "I give a damn," Ethan said carefully. "I'm here every shift. I work hard. You show up looking like you slept in a dumpster," Derek interrupted. "You drag ass through your shifts. You make excuses about your kid like the rest of us don't have families, too." "I don't make excuses." "The hell you don't." Derek was in his element now, performing for an audience. "Every other week it's something. Mia's sick. Mia's got school stuff. Mia needs this. Mia needs that. Newsflash, Cross, being a daddy doesn't make you special." Something dark and dangerous stirred in Ethan's chest. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "Don't talk about my daughter?" "Or what? You'll quit?" "Please," Derek laughed, a mean sound. "Where else you gonna go? You got no education, no skills, nothing but a sob story about your dead wife?" Ethan moved before his brain caught up with his body. 1 second he was standing there, the next he had Derek by the shirt, had shoved him back against the register, everything in him coiled to explode. "Don't," Ethan said, voice shaking. "Talk about my wife." The diner had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen sounds seemed to have stopped. Every eye was on them. Derek's face had gone from red to purple. But his eyes held triumph. "Get your hands off me." Ethan realized what he'd done, realized what Derek had wanted him to do all along. He let go, stepped back, hands shaking. "You just assaulted me," Derek said, adjusting his shirt with exaggerated care. "In front of witnesses." "I didn't." Everyone saw it. You put your hands on me. That's assault. Derek pulled his phone from his pocket, made a show of texting. I'm reporting this to the owner, and I'm firing you, effective immediately. Derek, please, get out, now, before I call the cops and have you arrested. Ethan stood frozen. Everything in him wanted to fight, to argue, to make this right. But the truth was crushing and simple. He'd lost. Derek had baited him perfectly, and he'd taken it. I need this job, Ethan said quietly. I've got my daughter. I've got rent. I should have thought of that before you attacked me. Derek pointed at the door. Out. Don't come back. I see you on this property again. I'm calling the police. Ethan's vision blurred. Not tears. He wouldn't give Derek the satisfaction, but something like them. The walls of his carefully constructed life were crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. He untied his apron with numb fingers, set it on the counter, walked toward the door while everyone watched, customers who'd known him for years, co-workers who'd shared shifts, all of them silent witnesses to his humiliation. His hand was on the door when Derek spoke again. Hey, Cross? Ethan turned. Derek smiled. Good luck explaining to your kid why Daddy can't keep a job. The door slammed behind Ethan harder than he meant it to. The morning air hit him like a slap, cold, crisp, carrying the smell of rain and pavement. The parking lot stretched before him, his beat-up truck sitting in its spot like a monument to everything he couldn't afford to lose and just had anyway. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Mia asked if you're picking her up today, or me. Let me know. Ethan stared at the message, couldn't make his fingers work to type a response. How did he explain this? What words existed to tell his daughter that he'd blown up everything they had because he couldn't keep his temper in check? He slid down against his truck's tire until he was sitting on the wet pavement, back against the metal, staring at nothing. The diner's windows glowed with warm light and normal people doing normal things. Inside, the world kept turning. Out here, his had just stopped. His phone buzzed again. Mrs. Chen probably wondering why he hadn't responded. Or maybe the landlord, somehow already knowing the rent was about to be late. Or the universe, just piling on because why the hell not? But when he looked at the screen, it wasn't a text. It was a notification about his bank account. He opened it without thinking, some masochistic impulse to see exactly how bad things were. Balance. $247.63. He had $247 to his name. Rent was $850, due in 12 days. He'd been counting on his next 2 paychecks to cover it, with a little left over for groceries and Mia's school supplies. Now he had nothing. No job, no prospects, no plan. Just a 6-year-old daughter who deserved better than this, and a father who couldn't seem to stop failing her. The sound of an engine pulled his attention. A car was pulling into the lot. A black sedan, expensive, moving with the kind of quiet confidence that came from German engineering and a 6-figure price tag. It parked across the street where the angle gave a perfect view of the diner's entrance. The driver didn't get out, just sat there, engine idling, watching. Something about that car tickled Ethan's memory, but his brain was too scrambled to chase it down. He was too busy drowning to care about spectators. The door behind him opened. Maria stepped out, still in her grease-splattered apron, a cigarette already lit. She spotted Ethan on the ground, and her expression shifted from neutral to furious. That bastard, she muttered. That absolute bastard. It's fine, Ethan said flatly. It ain't fine. He's been gunning for you for months. I should have said something. Should have. She took a long drag, blew smoke at the sky. What he said in there about your wife? That was over the line. Doesn't matter now. Of course it matters. You can file a complaint with corporate with Maria. Ethan looked at her. There's no corporate. Graham Whitaker owns this place outright. And wherever he is, whatever he's doing, I guarantee he doesn't give a damn about one fired waiter. Maria opened her mouth, closed it. Couldn't argue because they both knew it was true. I gotta go, Ethan said, climbing to his feet. His legs felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. Thanks for, you need anything, money, a reference, anything. You call me, okay? He nodded, didn't trust his voice to work. The truck started on the first try, which felt like the universe's idea of a joke. Everything else in his life was falling apart, but sure, the engine cooperated. He was pulling out of the lot when he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw it, the black sedan still parked across the street, still watching, still waiting. And somewhere in the static of his ruined morning, Ethan's brain made a connection. That car, that particular luxury sedan, the same model that had been smoking on the highway last night, the same car Graham Whitaker had been driving. But that was impossible. Graham was probably at a hotel by now, or back on the road, or anywhere but here. The world didn't work that way. You didn't help a stranger one night and have them show up to watch your life implode the next morning. Except the car wasn't moving, wasn't leaving, was just there, watching the diner like it was waiting for something. Ethan shook his head, dismissed it, his imagination filling gaps, his desperate brain looking for meaning where none existed. Graham Whitaker was gone. The kindness of last night was over, and Ethan was completely, utterly alone. He drove home through streets that seemed grayer than they had an hour ago, every red light a small torture, every minute bringing him closer to having to figure out what came next. The apartment building looked more run down in daylight, paint peeling, shutters hanging crooked, the whole place sagging under the weight of too many deferred repairs. Inside, the silence was crushing. No Mia to fill the space with questions and laughter, no routine to follow, just him and the wreckage of his morning and the slow, terrible understanding that he'd destroyed everything. He sat on the couch, the same couch where Graham had slept, and put his head in his hands. What now? The question echoed in the empty room, unanswered and unanswerable. He'd figure something out. He always did. That's what you did when you had a kid depending on you. You figured it out, even when it seemed impossible. But sitting there in his quiet apartment, with the rent check ticking like a time bomb and his bank account showing triple digits, Ethan couldn't see the path forward. All he could see was the look on Derek's face when he'd smiled and told Ethan to explain this to his daughter. All he could feel was the weight of one more failure to add to the pile. And all he could hope was that maybe, somehow, he'd find a way through this before everything completely collapsed. He didn't know that across town, in that black sedan still parked across from the diner, Graham Whitaker was making a phone call. He didn't know that what he'd witnessed in that diner had changed something fundamental in a very powerful man's mind. He didn't know that sometimes the universe doesn't just pile on. Sometimes, when you least expect it, it gives back. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. Ethan sat on that couch until his legs went numb, staring at nothing, his mind running through scenarios that all ended the same way. Eviction, hunger, Mia's face when she realized Daddy couldn't protect her from the world anymore. Around noon, he forced himself to move, made a sandwich he couldn't taste, checked job listings online that all required experience he didn't have, or schedules that wouldn't work with Mia's school, applied to 3 anyway, knowing nothing would come of it. His phone rang at 2:17 p.m. Mrs. Chen. Ethan? Just confirming, am I getting Mia from school today? He closed his eyes. Yeah, please. Something came up at work. Everything all right? Her voice carried that particular tone of concern that made Ethan's throat tight. Fine. Just a schedule thing. I'll pick her up from your place around 6. Of course. Take your time. He hung up before she could ask more questions. Before his voice could crack and give away that nothing was fine, everything was burning, and he had no idea how to put out the fires. The apartment felt like a cage. He needed to move, to think, to do something other than sit here drowning in worst-case scenarios. He grabbed his keys and headed out, no destination in mind, just driving to keep the panic at bay. The truck took him past the elementary school where Mia would be finishing her day, past the grocery store where they shopped every Sunday, Mia riding in the cart even though she was getting too big for it, past the park with the swings she loved. Every familiar landmark felt like a countdown now. How many more times would they get to do these things before everything fell apart? He found himself on the highway without planning it, heading in the direction of last night's rescue. The shoulder where Graham's car had broken down was empty now. No sedan, no evidence anyone had been stranded there. Just wet gravel and tire tracks and the memory of a choice that felt like it belonged to a different person. Should have kept driving, Ethan thought bitterly. Should have stayed in my lane, minded my business, gotten home safe. Maybe then I would have had an extra hour of sleep, wouldn't have been so fried this morning, would have kept my cool when Derek started his shit. But even as the thought formed, he knew it was a lie. Derek had been hunting for an excuse for months. If it hadn't been today, it would have been next week, next month. The ending had been written the moment Derek decided Ethan was weak enough to target. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Probably spam. He almost didn't answer, but some desperate part of him hoping for a miracle made him pick up. Hello? Is this Ethan Cross? The voice was professional, female, unfamiliar. Yeah, who's this? My name is Patricia Holbrook. I'm calling from the Riverside Diner regarding... Look, I already got fired, Ethan interrupted. If Derek wants to pile on more, tell him Mr. Cross, please. I'm not calling about your termination. I'm calling about a complaint that was filed this morning. Ethan's grip tightened on the wheel. What complaint? A witness reported observing your dismissal and was concerned about the circumstances. They've requested a formal review of the incident. A witness? Ethan's mind raced. Maria? One of the customers? Who? I'm not at liberty to say, but we take allegations of workplace misconduct very seriously, and we'd like you to come in tomorrow morning to give your account of what happened. Derek already gave his account. He said I assaulted him. Yes, we have his statement. Now we'd like yours. Would 10 a.m. work? Ethan pulled into a gas station parking lot, needing to focus. Why? What difference does it make? He's the manager. I'm nobody. Patricia's voice softened slightly. Mr. Cross, every employee deserves due process. Even if the outcome doesn't change, you have a right to tell your side. Will you come in? He wanted to say no, wanted to tell her it was pointless, that people like him didn't win against people like Derek, that the system was rigged from the start. But another part of him, the part that had stopped for Graham, that still believed the world could surprise you, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was worth showing up for. 10 a.m., he said. Where? The main office. 847 Industrial Drive. Ask for me at reception. She hung up before he could ask more questions. Ethan sat there in the parking lot, engine running, trying to make sense of what just happened. A complaint, a review, due process. It felt like a trap, or a joke, or some new form of torture where they let him hope before crushing him completely. But he'd show up, because what else did he have to lose? The rest of the afternoon passed in a fog. He picked up Mia from Mrs. Chen's at 6, her backpack bouncing as she ran to him, her face lighting up like he was the best thing she'd seen all day. That look, pure, uncomplicated love, hurt worse than anything Derek had said. Daddy, guess what happened at recess? What happened, Mia Bean? Connor fell off the monkey bars and cried and said he broke his arm, but he didn't. He was just being dramatic. And then Emma said... She talked the whole drive home, her words tumbling over each other, and Ethan let them wash over him like a balm. This was what mattered. Not Derek, not the job, not the money. Just this little girl who trusted him completely and didn't know yet how badly he'd failed her. They made spaghetti for dinner, Mia's favorite, from a jar because Ethan had never mastered making sauce from scratch. She told him about her spelling test, got an A, and her art project, painting a rainbow that looked more like a blob, Daddy. But the teacher said it was creative. Normal conversation, normal evening, everything exactly the way it should be, except for the sword hanging over their heads that only Ethan could see. After dinner, after bath time, after 2 stories and 3 glasses of water and 4 trips to the bathroom, Mia finally settled into bed. Her room was small, but they'd made it hers. Walls painted pale purple, glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, drawings and photos covering every surface. Sarah's touches were everywhere, the decorations they'd planned together before. Ethan stopped that thought, pulled Mia's blanket up to her chin. Daddy? Her voice was sleepy. Are you sad? His breath caught. Why would you think that? You have your sad face. This is just my face, remember? No. She reached up, touched his cheek with small fingers. This is your sad face? You had it after Mommy went to heaven, too. The walls he'd built all day cracked. I'm okay, baby, just tired. Mrs. Chen says you work too hard. Mrs. Chen worries too much. She says you're a good daddy, the best daddy. Ethan's eyes burned. Well, Mrs. Chen is pretty smart. Mia yawned. Will you stay until I fall asleep? always. He sat on the floor beside her bed, back against the wall, holding her hand through the railings. Her breathing gradually slowed, deepened, until he knew she was dreaming. He stayed anyway, watching her sleep, memorizing the curve of her cheek and the way her eyelashes cast shadows and every tiny detail of this moment. "I'll fix this," he promised silently. "Whatever it takes. I'll find a way." He just had no idea how. That night sleep wouldn't come. Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through tomorrow's meeting in his head. What would he say? How could he explain what happened without sounding like he was making excuses? Derek would have his version locked down, calm, professional, the victim of an unstable employee. And Ethan would have... what? The truth? Like that mattered. At 3 a.m. he gave up and went to the living room, made coffee he didn't need, sat in the dark with his laptop looking at job listings again. Dishwasher at a hotel, overnight shifts, wouldn't work. Retail at the mall, part-time, minimum wage, wouldn't cover rent. Construction labor, required certification he didn't have. Every door closed, every option impossible. His email dinged. This late, it was probably spam. But when he opened it, he froze. The sender, G. Whitaker at Whitaker Enterprise. Subject line. Thank you. Ethan, I wanted to reach out to express my gratitude again for your kindness last night. I've been thinking about what you said, about helping people because you can, about paying it forward. It's a philosophy I wish more people lived by. I also wanted you to know that I made it back safely. The tow truck came through and my car is being repaired. I'm staying at the Riverside Inn as you suggested. Quite comfortable, actually. I hope your day went well. If our paths cross again, I'd welcome the chance to buy you lunch or coffee. You have my number if you ever need anything. With sincere thanks, Graham Ethan read it 3 times. The words were kind, genuine, the message of someone who actually gave a damn. But the timing felt surreal. This email arriving the same night, everything fell apart, like the universe highlighting the contrast between who Graham thought Ethan was and who Ethan actually was. A man who couldn't keep his job, couldn't control his temper, couldn't protect his daughter from the consequences of his failures. He almost replied, almost typed out the whole story. "Hey Graham, funny thing happened after I dropped you off. Turns out being kind doesn't pay rent. Turns out helping strangers doesn't matter when your boss decides you're expendable. Thanks for the offer of lunch, but I'll probably be living under a bridge by then." But his fingers hovered over the keys and wouldn't move. What was the point? Graham was a stranger passing through. Whatever connection they'd had for one rainy night was over. Dragging him into this mess would accomplish nothing except making Ethan look pathetic. He closed the laptop without responding. Morning came too fast. Mia's alarm at 6:30, the usual chaos of breakfast and getting ready, Mrs. Chen arriving to take her to school. Ethan went through the motions on autopilot, his mind already at that office, already preparing for whatever came next. "You look nice, Daddy," Mia said as he walked her to Mrs. Chen's door. He'd put on his one decent shirt, the button-down he saved for parent-teacher conferences. "Are you going somewhere special?" "Just a meeting." "About work?" "Yeah, about work." She studied him with those 2 old eyes. "I hope it goes good." "Goes well," he corrected automatically. "Goes well," she repeated and hugged him tight. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Mia Bean." The drive to 847 Industrial Drive took 20 minutes through morning traffic. The building was modern, all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed money and power. A brass plaque by the entrance read, "Whitaker Enterprises, Regional Office." Ethan's stomach dropped. Whitaker. Graham Whitaker. The same Graham who'd slept on his couch. The same Graham who owned the Riverside Diner. The same Graham whose car had broken down in the rain, and no. It couldn't be. Whitaker was a common name. This was coincidence. Had to be. But Ethan's hands were shaking as he pushed through the glass doors into a lobby that belonged in a magazine. Marble floors, modern art. A reception desk staffed by a woman who looked like she'd never had a bad day in her life. "I'm here to see Patricia Holbrook," Ethan said. "I have a 10 o'clock. "Name?" "Ethan Cross." She typed something, smiled. "She's expecting you. 4th floor, suite 402. Elevators are to your right." The elevator was glass-walled, offering a view of the atrium as it rose. Everything about this place was designed to make you feel small, insignificant, aware of your place in the hierarchy. Ethan tugged at his collar and tried not to think about how much the receptionist's watch probably cost. Suite 402 had frosted glass doors and Patricia's name etched in chrome. He knocked, heard a voice call, "Come in." Patricia Holbrook was 50-something, sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ethan's rent, but her handshake was firm and her smile seemed genuine. "Mr. Cross, thank you for coming. Please sit." The office was spacious but not ostentatious. Clean lines, comfortable chairs, a window overlooking the parking lot. Patricia sat across from him, a notepad on the table between them. "I want to start by saying this is an informal review," she began. "You're not on trial. We're simply trying to understand what happened yesterday morning so we can respond appropriately." "Respond how?" "That depends on what we learn. Why don't you walk me through your morning? Start from when you arrived at the diner." So Ethan talked, told her about running late because of Graham, about Derek immediately confronting him, about the escalation. He tried to be fair, admitted he'd grabbed Derek, admitted he'd lost his temper. But he also told her what Derek had said, the deliberate provocation, the comments about Sarah. Patricia took notes, her expression neutral. When Ethan finished, she was quiet for a moment. "How long have you worked at the Riverside Diner?" 2 years, almost." "And your performance reviews?" "Good, all good. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I show up, I work hard, He stopped. "Look, I know what this is. Derek's the manager. I'm the waiter. He says I attacked him. I'm done. I get it." "What if I told you there were cameras in the diner?" Ethan's breath caught. "Cameras?" "Security system, installed 6 months ago. Everything that happened yesterday was recorded." The room tilted. "Everything?" "Everything, including what Mr. Voss said about your wife, including how he engineered the entire confrontation." Patricia leaned forward. "Mr. Cross, what I'm about to tell you is confidential, but I think you deserve to know. The complaint filed yesterday came from someone who witnessed your dismissal. That person also happens to be the owner of the Riverside Diner." The floor fell out from under him. "Graham. Mr. Whitaker was across the street when you were fired. He'd come back to thank you for your help the previous night. Instead, he saw what Mr. Voss did." Ethan couldn't breathe. He saw. He was quite disturbed by it. Disturbed enough to request an immediate review and to come here this morning to ensure it was handled properly. "He's here? Now? In the building, yes. He'd like to speak with you after we're done, if you're willing." Ethan's mind reeled. Graham had been there, had watched Derek destroy him, had filed a complaint, was here now waiting to, what? Pity him? Fix things? Ethan didn't know whether to be grateful or humiliated. "What happens next?" he managed. "Based on the security footage in your statement, we're terminating Mr. Voss's employment, effective immediately. He violated several company policies, including harassment and creating a hostile work environment. We'll also be offering you full reinstatement with back pay for the day you missed." The words didn't make sense. Ethan heard them, understood them individually, but together they formed a reality his brain couldn't process. "You're firing Derek?" "Yes." "And giving me my job back?" "Not just your job. Mr. Whitaker has requested that you be promoted to assistant manager, with a substantial pay increase and benefits package. He believes the diner would benefit from leadership that demonstrates actual compassion and integrity." Ethan sat there, stunned into silence. Yesterday he'd been jobless, hopeless, drowning. Today someone was offering him not just survival, but something more. Recognition, advancement, a future. "Why?" The word came out barely a whisper. "Why would he do this?" Patricia smiled. "You'd have to ask him that yourself. But if I had to guess, I'd say you reminded him what kindness looks like, and he wanted to return it." I can't." Ethan's throat was too tight to form words. "Take a moment. This is a lot to process." Patricia stood. "I'll let Mr. Whitaker know you're ready when you are. No pressure." She left, closing the door softly. Ethan sat alone in that expensive office, his whole world rearranging itself. 24 hours ago, he'd stopped for a stranger in the rain. Now that stranger was changing his life. It felt impossible. Felt like something from a movie, not real life. People like Ethan didn't get rescued. They just struggled through, survived if they were lucky, and tried not to drown. But here was proof, documented, official, real, that sometimes the universe didn't just take. Sometimes it gave back. A knock at the door. Ethan turned to see Graham standing in the doorway, no longer in borrowed sweatpants, but in an expensive suit that fit perfectly. Still the same man, though, same kind eyes, same slightly concerned expression. "Hello, Ethan." "Graham, Ethan stood, suddenly aware of how he must look, rumpled shirt, exhausted face, completely out of his depth. "I don't know what to say." You don't have to say anything." Graham stepped inside, closed the door. "I'm the one who should be talking. May I?" Ethan nodded, and they both sat, not across the table like during the interview, but in chairs angled toward each other. The formal distance collapsed into something more human. "When you stopped for me 2 nights ago," Graham began, "I was having what you might call a crisis of faith. Not religious, I'm not a particularly spiritual man, but faith in people, in humanity. I'd just come from a business meeting where I watched supposedly good people argue for 2 hours about how to minimize costs by cutting employee benefits, insurance, sick days, the things that actually matter to people trying to live their lives." He paused, his hands folded in his lap. "I was driving home thinking about how much of my life I've spent in rooms like that, with people like that, and wondering if that's all the world is now. People protecting their own interests, nobody giving a damn about strangers. Then my car broke down," he continued, "and I stood in that rain for 40 minutes. 11 cars passed me, Ethan. 11. Some slowed down like they were thinking about it, then kept going. One person even honked, like I was in their way. By the time you stopped, I'd pretty much confirmed everything I'd been thinking, that I was alone, that everyone is alone, that kindness is dead." Graham's eyes met Ethan's. "And then you stopped. You didn't know who I was, didn't know if I was dangerous or crazy or going to rob you. You were exhausted. I could see it on your face. You had every reason to keep driving, but you didn't." "I couldn't just leave you there," Ethan said quietly. "Exactly. You couldn't, because despite everything you were dealing with, and I looked you up afterward, so I know about your wife, about raising your daughter alone, about how hard you work, despite all of that, you still had room in your life to care about a stranger. That doesn't make me special." "It absolutely does. It makes you exactly the kind of person I wish I saw more of in the world." Graham leaned forward. "Yesterday morning, I drove back to thank you. I was going to take you to breakfast, try to repay some small fraction of what you'd given me. Instead, I sat in my car and watched you get fired for being 2 minutes late after helping someone in need." "It wasn't just being late," Ethan said. "I grabbed him. He goaded you. I watched the security footage, Ethan. He said things specifically designed to make you lose control. He brought up your wife, your daughter, pushed every button he could find. And even then, all you did was grab his shirt. You didn't hit him, didn't threaten him. Just stood there shaking with the effort of holding yourself back. Still shouldn't have touched him. Maybe not. But what he did was worse. He took a good man who was tired and struggling and trying his best, and he humiliated him for sport. In front of customers. In front of your coworkers. He enjoyed it, Ethan. I saw his face. He enjoyed destroying you." The memory of Derek's smile flashed through Ethan's mind, that triumphant expression when he'd known he'd won. "So I made some calls," Graham said. "Found out I still technically own that diner, bought it years ago as an investment property. Haven't thought about it much since. Asked HR to pull the footage. Reviewed it myself. And then I asked them to bring you here so I could make this right. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did. Because what you did for me mattered. You showed me that kindness isn't dead, that people still help each other for no reason, except it's the right thing to do. The absolute least I can do is make sure you're not punished for it." Ethan's eyes burned. He blinked hard, trying to keep it together, but everything from the past 48 hours was crashing down on him. The fear, the relief, the sheer overwhelming gratitude. I didn't help you to get something back, he said, voice rough. I didn't do it expecting... I know. That's exactly why you deserve this. Graham smiled. Patricia told you about the promotion? Ethan nodded. Good. The diner needs real leadership. Someone who understands that the people working there are human beings with lives and problems and families. Someone who leads with compassion instead of cruelty. He paused. I think you're that person, Ethan, if you want it. Yes. God, yes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see the state of that place. Derek hasn't been doing his job properly for months. You're going to have a lot of cleanup ahead of you. I can handle it. I believe you can. Graham stood, extended his hand. Welcome back to the Riverside Diner. I'll let Patricia go over the details, salary, benefits, start date, but I wanted to tell you personally, you've got this job for as long as you want it. No more walking on eggshells. No more worrying about being targeted. You've earned the right to just work and live your life. Ethan shook his hand, grip firm despite the trembling. I don't know how to repay you for this. Pass it on. Help the next person who needs it. That's all the repayment I need. Graham headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Ethan, your daughter, Mia, right? Yeah, how did you... Patricia mentioned she's the reason you work so hard. Well, you can tell her that her daddy just got a raise big enough to not have to work quite so many doubles. Maybe you two can have a few more dinners together. Maybe some weekends off. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. The kindness of them, the understanding. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you so much. Graham nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Ethan sank back into his chair, hands covering his face, and finally let himself cry. Relief. Gratitude. The release of 48 hours of terror that it was all ending, that he'd failed Mia, that there was no way out. But there had been a way out. There had been Graham and cameras and justice actually being served for once. There had been kindness returned. Patricia came back 30 minutes later with paperwork, contracts, direct deposit forms, an employee handbook. She walked him through everything, his new salary, almost double what he'd been making, health insurance that actually covered things, 2 weeks paid vacation, sick days that didn't require a death certificate to use. Your start date is Monday, she said. That gives you the weekend to rest and prepare. We've already informed the staff at the Riverside Diner about the management change. Derek was escorted from the premises this morning. How did he take it? About as well as you'd expect. Lot of threats, lot of claims about lawyers. But the evidence is pretty damning. He won't be working in this industry again. She handed him one final document. This is your direct contact information for Mr. Whitaker and myself. If you need anything at all, you reach out. Clear? Clear. Good. She smiled. Congratulations, Mr. Cross. I have a feeling you're going to do great things with that diner. Ethan walked out of that building into midday sunshine, everything around him looking different somehow. Same parking lot, same truck, same world. But he wasn't the same person who'd walked in. That person had been drowning. This person had a lifeline. He sat in his truck and pulled out his phone, dialed Mrs. Chen. Ethan? Everything okay? Yeah, better than okay. His voice cracked. I got the job back. With a promotion. I'm gonna be okay. Oh, honey, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. Can I pick up Mia early? I want to tell her, want to take her out for ice cream or something. Just spend time with her. Of course, she'll be thrilled. He hung up and just sat there, engine off, windows down, breathing in air that tasted like freedom, like possibility. Like maybe the universe wasn't just a cruel machine grinding people down. Maybe sometimes it surprised you. Maybe sometimes it gave back exactly what you needed, exactly when you needed it. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Make sure you get the Rocky Road. It's Mia's favorite. Gee, Ethan laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in days. How did Graham know Rocky Road was Mia's favorite? Had he asked? Had he just guessed? It didn't matter. What mattered was that someone cared enough to ask. Someone saw Ethan not as a problem or a burden or an expendable employee, but as a person worth helping, a father worth supporting. He texted back, "Thank you for everything." The response came immediately. Thank you for reminding me why kindness matters. Ethan started the truck and headed toward the elementary school. He was early. Mia wouldn't be out for another hour, but he didn't care. He wanted to be there, waiting, ready to scoop her up and tell her that everything was going to be okay now. That they'd made it through the storm. That sometimes, when you do the right thing just because it's right, the universe notices. And sometimes, it rewards you. The ice cream shop was called Sweet Dreams, a local place with checkered floors and a jukebox that only played songs from the 50s. Mia pressed her face against the glass display case, studying the 32 flavors with the intense concentration of a diamond appraiser. Can I get 2 scoops? She asked, eyes wide with hope. You can get 3 if you want, Ethan said. She spun around so fast she nearly fell over. 3? Really? Really? Did we win the lottery? Ethan laughed, crouching down to her level. No, baby. But Daddy got some really good news today. I got promoted at work, which means more money, and also means I don't have to work as many late nights anymore. Mia threw her arms around his neck, nearly knocking him over. Does that mean more dinners together? A lot more dinners together. And movie nights? Movie nights too. Can we watch the one with the singing princess? We can watch whatever you want. She pulled back, studying his face with that unnerving ability kids have to see straight through you. You're not sad anymore. No, Ethan said, and realized it was true. The weight that had been crushing him for 2 days had lifted. Not completely. There was still work ahead, still uncertainty, but enough that he could breathe again. I'm not sad anymore. Good. I don't like it when you're sad. She turned back to the ice cream case. I want Rocky Road, cookie dough, and mint chocolate chip. That's a lot of ice cream, Mia Bean. You said I could have 3. I did say that. He stood, pulling out his wallet. For the first time in months, he didn't have to count the bills first, didn't have to calculate whether buying ice cream meant skipping lunch tomorrow. 3 scoops it is. They sat at a corner booth, Mia attacking her ice cream like it might escape, Ethan nursing a coffee and watching her be 6 years old. No worries, no fear. Just pure joy over sugar and sprinkles and having her dad there with nothing to rush home for. His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Staff meeting scheduled for Monday morning, 7 a.m. before the diner opens. We'll introduce you to the team and go over transition plans. Also, attached is the employee file for Derek Voss. You should review it before the meeting. Some interesting reading. Ethan opened the attachment while Mia narrated a detailed story about something that happened at lunch involving Connor and a spilled juice box. The file was extensive. 3 years of employment records, performance reviews, incident reports. But what caught Ethan's attention was the complaints section. 7 formal complaints in 3 years, all from employees, all describing the same pattern: verbal abuse, favoritism, creating hostile work environments. 2 had resulted in employees quitting. 1 had led to a brief suspension that Derek had apparently appealed and won. The rest had been noted but not acted on. Ethan's stomach turned as he read through the details. Maria had filed one 18 months ago, describing how Derek had berated her in front of customers for forgetting to refill a coffee pot. Another waiter, someone Ethan didn't recognize, must have been before his time, had documented 3 months of escalating harassment before finally walking out mid-shift. The pattern was clear. Derek targeted people he thought were vulnerable, people who needed the job too much to fight back, people who'd take the abuse because they had no other choice. And management had known, had documented it, had done basically nothing. Daddy, you're making your thinking face. Ethan looked up. Sorry, baby. Just work stuff. Is it bad work stuff? No, just complicated work stuff. She considered this while licking mint chocolate chip off her fingers. Mrs. Chen says complicated is just another word for interesting. Mrs. Chen is very wise. She also says you should date someone. Ethan nearly choked on his coffee. What? She told Mrs. Rodriguez from downstairs that you're too young to be alone forever and that you're a catch. Mia said this completely matter-of-factly, like she was reporting the weather. What's a catch? It means it's just something adults say. And Mrs. Chen should mind her own business. She says you're too focused on being sad about Mommy. The mention of Sarah sent a familiar ache through Ethan's chest. I'm not sad about Mommy. I miss her. That's different. Do you think she'd want you to be alone? The question came from a 6-year-old, but landed with the weight of something much older, much wiser. Ethan set down his coffee, giving her his full attention. Where's this coming from, Mia? She shrugged, suddenly fascinated by her ice cream. I was looking at pictures, the ones in your room. Mommy looks really happy in them. She was happy. We both were. So maybe she'd want you to be happy again. Like, with someone else. Not instead of her, but, so you're not alone. Ethan's throat tightened. Sarah would have loved this, their daughter, barely in first grade, trying to play matchmaker from beyond the grave. It was exactly the kind of beautiful, heartbreaking thing that made single parenthood feel like walking through a minefield of emotions. I'm not alone, he said gently. I have you. That's different. I'm your kid. You need a grown-up. I'll think about it. Okay? Okay. She went back to her ice cream, apparently satisfied with this answer. Crisis averted, childhood resumed. They finished their ice cream and headed home as the sun started its descent toward the horizon. The apartment looked different somehow, still small, still worn, but no longer suffocating. The same space that had felt like a cage 2 days ago now felt like shelter, like home. Ethan made dinner while Mia did homework at the kitchen table, her tongue sticking out in concentration as she worked through subtraction problems. Normal sounds filled the apartment, water running, pencil scratching paper, the hum of the refrigerator, everything exactly as it should be. After Mia went to bed, Ethan sat on the couch with his laptop, reading through the rest of Derek's file. The more he read, the angrier he got. Not hot anger, cold, calculated fury at a system that had let this continue for years, at managers who'd noted problems and done nothing, at Derek himself, who'd apparently seen kindness as weakness and had spent 3 years proving it. But beneath the anger was something else. Determination. He had a chance now to change things, to make sure the next person who worked at that diner didn't have to endure what he'd endured, what Maria had endured, what all of those complaint-filing employees had endured. His phone rang. Graham's name on the screen. Hello? Ethan, hope I'm not calling too late. No, it's fine. Mia just went to bed. Good. I wanted to check in, see how you're feeling about Monday. Ethan leaned back against the couch cushions. Honestly? Nervous. I've never managed anything before. What if I screw it up? You won't. You sound pretty confident for someone who's known me for like 48 hours. Graham chuckled. I'm confident because I've seen what matters. I've worked with plenty of managers who had all the training and credentials and still treated people like garbage. You have something more important. You actually give a damn. That's a pretty low bar. You'd be surprised how many people can't clear it. A pause. I reviewed Derek's file. Patricia sent it over. Yeah, I just finished reading it. It's bad, Graham. Really bad. How did nobody do anything? Because addressing it would have required admitting there was a problem. Would have meant investigating, potentially facing lawsuits, dealing with bad press. Much easier to just note the complaints and hope people quit quietly. That's not right. No, it's not. But it's common. Corporate culture often prioritizes protecting the company over protecting employees. Graham's voice hardened. Which is exactly why I want you in that position. You're not going to protect the status quo. You're going to fix what's broken. How do you know I won't just become another Derek? Because you know what it feels like to be on the receiving end. You'll remember. And if you ever forget, I trust you'll have people around you willing to remind you. Ethan thought about Maria, about the other staff members he barely knew, about everyone who'd suffered under Derek's management. They're probably going to hate me. They're probably going to think I got promoted because I kissed up to the owner. Let them think what they want. You'll prove yourself through actions. Speaking of which, papers rustled in the background. Patricia mentioned you'll have the authority to make staffing decisions. I want you to know you have my full support to hire, fire, or restructure however you see fit. That's a lot of trust for someone you barely know. I trust my instincts. They haven't steered me wrong yet. Another pause. There's something else. I've been thinking about expanding the diner's hours, maybe adding a weekend brunch service, more community outreach, but that's all secondary to making sure the people who work there are treated with dignity and paid fairly. I want you to review everyone's wages, see where we can make adjustments. You want me to give people raises? I want you to pay people what they're worth. There's a difference. Graham's voice softened. Ethan, I've spent 30 years building businesses, made a lot of money, employed a lot of people, but somewhere along the way I forgot that every employee is someone's father or mother or son or daughter. They're not just labor costs on a spreadsheet. They're humans with lives and problems and dreams. You reminded me of that. Now I want you to help me build something that reflects it. The weight of that responsibility settled onto Ethan's shoulders. Heavy, but not crushing. Challenging, but not impossible. I'll do my best. That's all anyone can ask. They hung up, and Ethan sat in the quiet apartment feeling something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Purpose. Not just survival, not just getting through each day. Actual purpose. A mission that mattered. He spent the rest of the evening making notes, ideas for changes, questions to ask, ways to rebuild trust with a staff that had been failed by management. By the time he finally crawled into bed after midnight, his head was spinning with possibilities. Monday morning arrived too fast. Ethan woke at 5 a.m., pulse hammering, stomach twisted in knots. He dressed carefully, his good shirt, ironed this time, pants that actually fit, shoes that weren't worn through at the heels. Stood in front of the bathroom mirror, giving himself a pep talk that sounded ridiculous, even to his own ears. You can do this. You're qualified. You care. That matters. Graham believes in you. That matters. You're not going to screw this up because you can't afford to screw this up. And, Daddy, why are you talking to yourself? He turned to find Mia standing in the doorway, hair sticking up, one sock on, holding her favorite stuffed rabbit. Just practicing, he said. For what? My first day, as a manager. She padded into the bathroom, climbed onto the toilet to reach the sink, and started brushing her teeth. Around the toothbrush, she mumbled, You're going to be great. How do you know? She spit, rinsed, looked at him seriously. Because you're my daddy, and my daddy is the best. The simplicity of her faith, the absolute certainty in those words, settled something in Ethan's chest. He kissed the top of her head. Thanks, baby. Can I have waffles? Frozen or real? Real, like you make them? He checked the time, 5:47 a.m. The meeting was at 7. He had time, barely. Real, go get dressed. She scrambled off the toilet and disappeared in a flash of pajamas and rabbit. Ethan headed to the kitchen, pulled out the waffle iron Sarah had bought at a yard sale, mixed batter from scratch while the coffee brewed. The ritual of it, measuring, stirring, waiting for the iron to heat, calmed his nerves. This he could do. This he knew. By 6:15, they were sitting at the table, Mia demolishing waffles with enough syrup to constitute a health hazard, Ethan pushing food around his plate and failing to eat. You're nervous, Mia observed. Little bit. Mrs. Chen says when you're nervous, you should take deep breaths. Mrs. Chen is full of advice. She's old. Old people know stuff. Ethan smiled despite himself. That's true. He dropped Mia at Mrs. Chen's at 6:30, endured a pep talk from the older woman that was somehow both encouraging and terrifying, and made the drive to the diner with his heart trying to escape through his throat. The parking lot was empty except for 3 cars, Maria's beat-up Honda, another vehicle Ethan didn't recognize, and Graham's black sedan parked discreetly in the far corner. The diner's windows were dark, closed signs still hanging, but the back door was unlocked. Inside, the kitchen lights were on. Maria stood at the prep counter chopping vegetables, her movements precise and automatic. She looked up when Ethan entered, her expression carefully neutral. Morning, she said. Morning. Ethan hung his jacket on the hook. You're here early. Patricia called yesterday, said there was a staff meeting, figured I should show up. How much do you know? I know Derek's gone. I know you're the new assistant manager. I know Graham Whitaker himself is apparently involved in this clusterfuck. She set down her knife. What I don't know is how you pulled that off. I didn't pull anything off. Things happened. Things don't just happen, Ethan. Not like this. Before he could respond, the back door opened again. 3 more staff members filed in. Jenny Martinez, the morning shift waitress, Carlos, the dishwasher, and someone Ethan vaguely recognized from evening shifts, but whose name he'd never learned. They all looked confused, wary, like people who'd been called to the principal's office and weren't sure if they were in trouble or not. Patricia entered last, carrying a tablet and wearing her professional armor. "Good morning, everyone all. Thank you for coming in early. Let's head to the dining room. We've set up for the meeting there." The dining room had been transformed, tables pushed together to form a conference setup, chairs arranged in a circle, coffee and donuts on the counter. Graham stood by the window, looking out at the empty parking lot, and turned when they entered. "Please, everyone, sit," Patricia said. "Help yourself to coffee and breakfast." They settled awkwardly, the staff exchanging glances, nobody quite sure what was happening. Ethan took a seat between Maria and Carlos, hyper-aware of every eye on him. Patricia remained standing. "I'll keep this brief because I know you all need to prepare for opening. As you've probably heard, Derek Voss is no longer employed by the Riverside Diner. After reviewing security footage and employee complaints, we determined his management style was incompatible with our values." "Values?" Maria muttered. "Since when do we have values?" Patricia heard but didn't react. "Going forward, Ethan Cross will be serving as assistant manager. He'll be responsible for day-to-day operations, scheduling, and staff management. I'll let him introduce himself." Every face turned toward Ethan. He stood, legs shaking slightly, and cleared his throat. "Hi. So, most of you know me. I've worked here for 2 years. I've been where you are, doing the grunt work, taking orders, trying to make ends meet. I know what it's like when management doesn't have your back, when you're scared to call in sick, or ask for time off, or speak up about problems." He paused, gathering courage. "I can't promise I'm going to be perfect. I've never managed anyone before. But I can promise I'm going to listen, and I'm going to fight for you. This place is going to change, starting today." Silence. Then Jenny raised her hand. "Can I ask a question?" "Of course." "Why'd Derek really get fired? Because I've been here 4 years and I've seen him do worse than what happened with you. What made this time different?" "Fair question. Honest question." "Honest." Ethan glanced at Graham, who gave a subtle nod. "What made it different was that someone with power actually witnessed it and decided to do something," Ethan said. "Graham Whitaker, the owner, was there when Derek fired me. He saw everything, and instead of looking the other way like management has apparently done for years, he took action." "So you got special treatment because you're buddies with the owner?" Maria's voice was sharp, challenging. "No, I got justice because someone finally paid attention." Ethan met her eyes. "But you're right to be skeptical. You've been let down before. You've filed complaints that went nowhere. You've watched people get abused and nothing change. Why should this be different?" "Exactly. Why should we believe you?" "You shouldn't. Not yet. You should wait and see if my actions match my words." He turned to address the whole group. "I read Derek's file. I know about the complaints. I know how long this has been a problem. And I know talk is cheap, so here's what I'm going to do. Over the next 2 weeks, I want to meet with each of you individually. I want to hear about your experiences here. The good, the bad, all of it. And then I want to work together to fix what's broken." Carlos spoke up, his voice quiet. "What about wages?" "What about them?" "Derek always said we couldn't get raises because the budget was tight. Is that true?" Ethan looked at Graham again. Graham stood, joining him at the front. "It's not true," Graham said simply. "The budget is fine. Derek wasn't authorized to give raises, but I am. And I've authorized Ethan to review everyone's pay and make adjustments where needed. Fair adjustments based on performance and tenure." You could have heard a pin drop. Jenny's coffee cup paused halfway to her mouth. Maria's eyes went wide. Carlos just stared. "You're serious," Maria finally said. "Completely serious," Graham replied. "This diner has been profitable for years. That profit came from your hard work. You deserve to share in it." "Why now?" Jenny asked. "Why not years ago?" "Because I wasn't paying attention years ago. I treated this place like an investment property, checked the numbers once a quarter, and assumed everything was fine. I was wrong. And I'm sorry." Graham's voice was sincere, no corporate polish. "I can't fix the past, but I can try to do better going forward." The meeting continued for another 30 minutes. Patricia going over new policies, Graham outlining his vision for the diner's future, Ethan answering questions as best he could. Slowly, cautiously, the staff began to relax. Not fully. Trust wasn't built in one meeting, but enough that the hostility faded into cautious optimism. As everyone dispersed to prepare for opening, Maria pulled Ethan aside. "Can we talk? Just for a minute?" They stepped into the kitchen, out of earshot. Maria crossed her arms, studying him. "I'm still not sure about this." "I know. Derek was a bastard, but he was a predictable bastard. I knew what to expect. You're an unknown." "Fair. But," she sighed, "but I watched you these past 2 years. Watched you come in exhausted and still smile at customers. Watched you cover shifts when people called out. Watched you get knocked down and keep getting back up. So maybe you'll screw this up, but at least I know you'll try not to. That's about all I can promise." "Then I guess that'll have to be enough." She stuck out her hand. "Congratulations, boss. Don't make me regret this." He shook it, grip firm. "I'll do my best." The diner opened at 7:30. The morning rush hit like it always did. Truckers wanting breakfast, early commuters grabbing coffee to go, regulars claiming their usual spots. But something felt different. Maybe it was knowing Derek was gone. Maybe it was the promise of change hanging in the air. Maybe it was just Ethan's perspective shifting. He worked the floor alongside the staff, taking orders, delivering food, refilling coffee. Not because he had to. Technically, he could have stayed in the office, done paperwork, managed from a distance. But because he wanted them to see him as part of the team, not above it. Around 10 a.m., during a lull, Graham appeared at the counter. He ordered coffee, black, and sat on one of the stools. "How's it going?" he asked. Ethan refilled his mug. "Weird. Good weird, but weird. That's normal. Change always feels weird at first." "They don't trust me yet." "They will. Give it time." Graham took a sip. "I'm heading back to the city this afternoon, but Patricia will be checking in weekly, and you have my direct number. Anything you need, anything at all, you call." "I will." "And Graham, thank you. I know I keep saying it, but you don't need to keep saying it. Just run this place well. Treat people right. That's thanks enough." They shook hands, and Graham left, his black sedan pulling out of the lot and disappearing into traffic. Ethan watched him go, feeling the weight of responsibility settle fully onto his shoulders now. This was real. This was happening. He was in charge of making sure this place didn't fail the people who worked here. No pressure. The rest of the day passed in a blur of learning on the fly, figuring out the ordering system, reviewing schedules, handling a minor crisis when the ice machine started making a concerning grinding noise. By the time 5 p.m. rolled around and his shift ended, Ethan was exhausted, but in a different way than before. Not the crushing, defeating exhaustion of working under Derek. This was the tired that came from actually accomplishing something. He picked up Mia from Mrs. Chen's, endured another round of questions about his day, and drove home. But when he pulled into the parking lot, something was different. A package sat outside his apartment door. A box, medium-sized, with his name on it. "What's that?" Mia asked, immediately interested. "I don't know. Let's find out." Inside, Ethan opened the box while Mia bounced on the couch next to him. Inside was a note on expensive cardstock. "Every manager needs the right tools. G." Beneath the note, a new laptop, a tablet, and a leather-bound notebook embossed with his initials. "Whoa," Mia breathed. "That's fancy." "Yeah," Ethan agreed, running his hand over the smooth leather. "Yeah, it is." That night, after Mia was asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with the new notebook open in front of him. On the first page he wrote, "Day 1, Things to Fix." Then he started listing everything he'd noticed, everything that needed attention, every way the diner could be better. The list filled 2 pages, then 3, then 4. It was overwhelming. It was daunting. It was exactly what he needed to do. And for the first time in 3 years, Ethan Cross felt like maybe, just maybe, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The first 3 weeks passed in a blur of 14-hour days and steep learning curves. Ethan threw himself into the work with an intensity that surprised even him, arriving before sunrise to review inventory, staying late to balance registers, spending every spare moment studying management techniques on the laptop Graham had sent. The staff watched him with cautious interest, waiting to see if the promises would translate into action. They didn't have to wait long. On his second Friday as assistant manager, Ethan called Maria into the small office behind the kitchen. She entered with her guard up, arms crossed, clearly expecting bad news. "Sit," Ethan said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "If this is about the eggs I burned yesterday, it's not." He pulled up a spreadsheet on his laptop, turned it so she could see. "I've been reviewing everyone's wages. You've been here 6 years, right?" 7 in March. "And your current hourly rate is $12.50. "Yeah, same as it's been for 3 years. Derek said raises were frozen." Ethan tapped a few keys. "As of Monday, you're at $16 an hour, plus a performance bonus structure. If the diner hits certain profit margins, you get a percentage. I'm implementing it for all senior staff." Maria stared at the screen, then at him, then back at the screen. That's $3.50 more per hour. Actually, it's $3.50, but yes." "Ethan, that's—" Her voice cracked. "That's almost $150 more per week. More like $140 after taxes, but yeah, you've earned it. You're the best cook we have, you train new staff, and you've held this place together through some serious garbage. It's about time someone recognized that." She pressed her hand to her mouth, eyes shining. "I have to call my daughter. She's been saving for college, and I can actually help her now. Actually contribute, and—" She stopped, composed herself. "Thank you. Seriously, thank you. Thank Graham. He's the one writing the checks. I'm just making sure they go to the right people." Similar conversations happened throughout the week. Carlos got a raise in health insurance that would cover his wife's medications. Jenny got bumped up to shift supervisor with the corresponding pay increase. Even the part-timers saw adjustments that reflected their actual value. Word spread fast. The atmosphere in the diner shifted from cautious to cautiously optimistic to something approaching actual morale. People smiled more, showed up on time, started taking pride in their work again. It was subtle but unmistakable, like watching a plant that had been dying slowly come back to life with water and sunlight. But not everyone was happy about the changes. Derek Voss had friends, other managers at nearby restaurants who shared his philosophy that employees were expendable and complaints were nuisances. They'd heard about his firing, heard about Ethan's promotion, and they didn't like it. The story spreading through the industry was that some nobody waiter had gotten lucky, caught the owner on a good day, and stolen a job he wasn't qualified for. Ethan heard the whispers, ignored them, focused on the work. Then, 3.5 weeks into his new position, he noticed something odd. The morning receipts weren't matching the previous night's reported sales. Not by much, $40 here, $60 there, but enough to catch his attention. He'd been reviewing the books every evening, familiarizing himself with the diner's financial rhythms, and the discrepancies stood out like wrong notes in a familiar song. He checked the next night's numbers. Same thing. $75 unaccounted for. Could be honest mistakes. Cash register errors. Customers leaving without paying. Could be nothing. But Ethan's gut said otherwise. He started watching more carefully. Noticed that the discrepancies only appeared on nights when the same person closed, a waiter named Ryan, who'd been hired 2 months before Ethan. Young guy, early 20s, always pleasant and professional. Never late, never complained, no obvious red flags. Ethan didn't want to believe it. Didn't want his first real challenge as a manager to involve accusing someone of theft. But the numbers didn't lie, and the pattern was too consistent to ignore. On Thursday evening, he stayed late after his shift ended, watching the security monitors from the back office. The diner was quiet, just Ryan finishing cleanup, wiping down tables, preparing the register for closing. Standard procedure. Nothing suspicious. Ryan counted the cash, recorded the amount in the logbook, and prepared the deposit bag. Everything by the book. Then he glanced around, checking if anyone was watching, and Ethan's stomach dropped. On screen, Ryan's hand dipped into the register one more time, pulled out bills, looked like 320s, and slipped them into his apron pocket. Quick, practiced, the motion of someone who'd done this before. Ethan's jaw clenched. He waited until Ryan finished closing and left through the back door. Then he locked up and drove home with his mind racing. This wasn't like confronting Derek. Ryan was younger, less established, maybe desperate for money. Maybe there were circumstances Ethan didn't know about. Or maybe he was just a thief who'd been stealing from a business that employed him, from coworkers who depended on that revenue. from a system Ethan was trying to rebuild based on trust and integrity. Either way, he couldn't let it slide. Friday morning, Ethan arrived an hour early, reviewed the security footage again, confirmed what he'd seen, documented everything. Then he called Patricia. "I need advice," he said when she answered. "I've got an employee stealing from the register." "How sure are you?" "Very. I've got him on camera and the numbers back it up, but I've never fired anyone before and I don't want to screw this up." Patricia walked him through the process. Document everything. Have a witness present. Keep it private but professional. Don't make accusations until presenting evidence. Standard HR protocol. By the time they hung up, Ethan felt marginally more prepared. He asked Maria to be his witness. She agreed without hesitation, her expression hardening when he explained what was happening. "I knew something was off with him," she muttered. "Kid was too smooth, too friendly. Friendly doesn't mean guilty." "No, but stealing does." Ryan arrived for his shift at 2 p.m., his usual easy smile in place. Ethan let him get settled, then asked him to step into the office. Maria followed, closing the door behind them. "What's going on?" Ryan asked, still smiling but with a hint of nervousness creeping in. Ethan gestured to the chair. "Sit down, Ryan. We need to talk about some discrepancies I've noticed in the evening receipts." The smile faltered. "Discrepancies?" "Money that was supposed to be in the register but wasn't." Ethan pulled up the spreadsheet, turned the laptop around. "Over the past 3 weeks, we've had consistent shortfalls on nights you closed. Small amounts, $40 to $75, but consistent." Ryan's face paled. "I don't know anything about that. Maybe customers are shorting their bills, or—" "I checked the security footage." Ethan clicked a key, and the video appeared on screen. Ryan at the register, hand dipping in, bills disappearing into his apron. The silence in the room was absolute. Ryan stared at the screen, all color draining from his face. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "I can explain." "I'm listening." "My mom's sick, cancer. She doesn't have insurance and the bills they're destroying us. I tried to ask for a raise, but Derek said no, and I was desperate." Ethan felt a stab of sympathy. He knew desperation, knew what it felt like when the world was crushing you and you couldn't see any way out. But sympathy didn't change what Ryan had done. "I'm sorry about your mom," Ethan said quietly. "I really am, but you were stealing from people who are struggling too. Maria's trying to help her daughter pay for college. Carlos needs his paycheck to cover his wife's medications. Every dollar you took was a dollar that could have gone to them, or to keeping this place running so we all have jobs." I know, and Ryan's voice broke. "I'm sorry, I'll pay it back, all of it. Please don't fire me. I need this job." Maria spoke up, her tone hard. "You should have thought about that before you started stealing." "I was desperate. We're all desperate." Maria's voice rose. "You think you're special? You think the rest of us don't have problems? Carlos's wife has diabetes. Jenny's raising 3 kids alone. I'm trying to keep my own head above water, but we don't steal. We work. We show up and do our jobs, and we don't take what isn't ours." Ryan turned back to Ethan, eyes pleading. "Please, give me another chance. I'll never do it again. I swear." Ethan wanted to. Every soft part of him wanted to believe in redemption, in second chances, in the possibility that people could change. But he also knew that letting this slide would send a message. To Ryan, to the rest of the staff, to himself. It would say that rules only mattered sometimes. That theft was okay if you had a good excuse, and that wasn't the kind of manager he wanted to be. "I believe you're sorry," Ethan said, "and I believe you were desperate, but I can't keep you on. You violated trust. You stole from your coworkers, and if I let that go, what message does that send to everyone else here? But you're fired, effective immediately. I'll pay you for today's shift, but after that you need to leave. And Ryan?" Ethan held his gaze. "I'm not calling the cops. I'm not pressing charges. I'm giving you a chance to walk away and figure out a different path. But if you ever apply to work here again, or if I hear you're pulling this at another restaurant, that changes. Clear?" Ryan sat frozen for a moment, then nodded slowly. Stood up. Walked to the door with his shoulders slumped, looking 10 years older than when he'd entered.
At the threshold, he paused. For what it's worth, you're a better boss than Derek ever was. Then he was gone. Maria let out a long breath. That sucked. Yeah. You did the right thing. Doesn't feel like it. Right things rarely do. She stood, straightened her apron. I'll spread the word to the staff. Make sure everyone knows what happened and why. Transparency is important. Thanks, Maria. She paused at the door. You know Derek would have called the cops, would have made a big show of it, probably pressed charges just to prove a point. I'm not Derek. No, you're not. She smiled slightly. That's why this is going to work. The rest of the day was tense. Word spread quickly. Ryan had been caught stealing and fired. Ethan held a brief staff meeting before the dinner rush, explained what happened without going into excessive detail, and reminded everyone that integrity mattered, that they were building something better here, and that required everyone to be honest. The staff nodded, asked a few questions, then got back to work. Professional, united. Stronger than before, somehow. That evening, after closing, Ethan sat in the office going through the books again. He needed to figure out exactly how much Ryan had taken, needed to document it all properly for the records. The total came to roughly $850 over 3 weeks. Not enough to bankrupt the diner, but enough to matter, enough to hurt. His phone rang. Graham's name on the screen. Hey, Ethan answered. Patricia told me what happened. You okay? Yeah, just wasn't expecting to have to fire someone my first month. How'd you handle it? Ethan walked Graham through the whole thing, the discovery, the confrontation, the decision. Graham listened without interrupting, then was quiet for a moment. You didn't press charges, Graham finally said. No, didn't seem necessary. He's young, he's struggling, and you're more compassionate than most managers would be in that situation. Is that a criticism? It's an observation. Derek would have called the police. Most managers would have, but you gave him a chance to learn from this and move forward. That says a lot about who you are. I just didn't want to destroy his life over a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Ethan. It was a choice. Multiple choices over several weeks. But your decision to show mercy, that was also a choice. One that took more courage than calling the cops would have. Graham paused. I'm proud of you. The words hit Ethan unexpectedly hard. When was the last time someone had said that to him? Sarah, probably, 3 years ago. Before everything fell apart. Thanks, he managed. That means a lot. How's everything else going? Good. Really good, actually. Staff morale is up. Customer satisfaction scores are improving. We're even seeing regulars come back who'd stopped coming during Derek's tenure. Any issues I should know about? Ethan hesitated, then decided honesty was the best policy. There's some resentment in the industry. Other managers who think I didn't earn this position. It hasn't caused problems yet, but I'm hearing things. Let them resent. You're proving yourself every day. That's what matters. They talked for another 10 minutes about operational details, future plans, small improvements. By the time they hung up, Ethan felt steadier, more grounded, like maybe he really could do this job. He locked up the diner and drove home through quiet streets. The apartment was dark. Mia at Mrs. Chen's for a sleepover with the neighbor's granddaughter. The silence should have been peaceful. Instead, it amplified the day's events, left him alone with thoughts that spiraled in directions he didn't want to explore. Had he done the right thing with Ryan? Should he have given him another chance? Was mercy the same as weakness? His phone buzzed, a text from Maria. Stop overthinking it. You did good today. Get some sleep. He smiled despite himself. Somehow she always knew. Sleep didn't come easy. Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, mind cycling through everything. Ryan's pleading expression, Maria's support, Graham's approval, the weight of decisions that affected people's lives. This was what leadership felt like. Not power, not authority, but responsibility. The burden of choices that rippled outward in ways you couldn't always predict. Saturday morning arrived with weak sunlight filtering through blinds. Ethan picked up Mia from Mrs. Chen's endured her excited recap of the sleepover and took her to the park. They needed normalcy.
Needed to be just a dad and daughter on a weekend morning, no crisis, no drama, just swings and slides and ice cream from the truck. "Daddy, push me higher!" Mia called from the swing, legs pumping enthusiastically. Ethan obliged, watching her soar, listening to her laughter. This was why everything else mattered. Every difficult decision, every long hour, every moment of self-doubt, it was all for this. To give her a life where she could be 6 years old without worrying about whether they'd make rent. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "Hello? Is this Ethan Cross?" Male voice, unfamiliar, slightly hostile. "Yeah, who's this?" "Derek Voss." Ethan's blood went cold. "What do you want?" "Just wanted to congratulate you on your little victory. Must feel good stealing someone's job." "I didn't steal anything." "You got yourself fired." "By being recorded without my knowledge. That's illegal, you know. I could sue." "Good luck with that. The cameras are posted. You knew they were there." Derek laughed, a mean sound. "You think you're so smart, you and your buddy Graham. But you're going to fail, Cross. That diner's a mess. The staff hates you, and when it all comes crashing down, I'm going to be there to watch." "Are you done?" "Not even close. I heard about your little theft problem. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? You take my job, now your employees are stealing from you. That situation's handled. For now. But you're in over your head. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to run that place into the ground, and then you'll be right back where you started. Broke, desperate, and worthless." The words were designed to hurt, to undermine, to plant seeds of doubt. Ethan recognized it because he'd been on the receiving end of Derek's manipulation before. "I'm hanging up now," Ethan said calmly. "And if you call me again, I'm reporting you for harassment. Have a good day, Derek." He ended the call before Derek could respond. His hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline spiking. Mia was still swinging, oblivious to the darkness that had just invaded their morning. "You're going to fail." The words echoed in Ethan's head despite his attempt to dismiss them. What if Derek was right? What if he was in over his head? What if his compassion was just naivety in disguise? "Daddy, did you see how high I went?" Ethan forced a smile. "I saw, baby. That was amazing. Can we get ice cream now?" "Yeah, let's get ice cream." They walked to the truck, Mia chattering about the flavors she wanted to try. Normal. Safe. A reminder that Derek's poison only had power if Ethan let it. That evening, after Mia was asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table reviewing the diner's financials on his laptop. Despite Ryan's theft, despite the operational challenges, despite everything, the numbers were improving. Revenue was up 12% from the previous month. Customer complaints were down. Employee turnover had stopped completely. The diner was healing. Under his leadership, it was actually healing. His email dinged. "Graham, heard Derek called you. Ignore him. He's bitter and desperate. Focus on the work. You're doing great." How did Graham always know? Was he psychic or just that good at anticipating trouble? Ethan typed back, "Thanks. Trying not to let him get in my head." The response came immediately. "Too late for that if you're up at midnight reviewing spreadsheets instead of sleeping. Go to bed. The diner will still be there tomorrow." Ethan smiled. "Yes, sir." "That's yes, Mr. Whitaker to you. I'm old, remember? Respect your elders. You're not that old. Old enough to know when someone's avoiding sleep because they're worried. Trust me, Ethan. You've got this. Now get some rest." Ethan closed the laptop and headed to bed. Lay there in the dark thinking about the past month. The terror of getting fired. The miracle of getting rehired. The challenge of learning to lead. The satisfaction of making real changes. It had been brutal and beautiful and more complicated than any job had a right to be. But for the first time since Sarah died, Ethan felt like he was building something. Not just surviving, not just getting through each day. Actually building a life worth living. The thought carried him into sleep, and for once, the dreams were good. Sunday passed quietly. Breakfast with Mia, grocery shopping, laundry, all the mundane rituals of normal life. Monday arrived with the familiar pre-dawn alarm, and Ethan was back at the diner before sunrise, reviewing inventory and preparing for another week. Maria arrived second, as always. Found him in the office staring at the security monitor. You're going to give yourself an ulcer, she said, pouring herself coffee. Just being thorough. Being paranoid, more like. She sat across from him. You can't watch everyone all the time. At some point you have to trust people. I do trust people. I just also verify. That's called trust issues, boss. He smiled slightly. Maybe, but after Ryan was one person, one bad apple. The rest of us are solid. She leaned forward. Look, I get it. You're new at this. You're scared of screwing up, but you can't lead from a place of fear. You gotta believe your people are gonna do right by you. And if they don't, you deal with it. But you can't assume everyone's a thief just because one person was. When did you get so wise? I've been doing this for 20 years. You learn things. She stood, stretched. Now come on, morning prep won't do itself. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, the rhythm familiar and grounding. Other staff filtered in, Carlos whistling off key, Jenny yawning and immediately beelining for coffee, the new hire Ethan had brought on to replace Ryan. The diner opened at 6:30. Morning rush hit like clockwork. Everything flowed smoothly, efficiently, the machinery of a well-run operation clicking into place. No drama, no crisis, just work. It was beautiful. Around noon, during the lull between breakfast and lunch, Ethan was in the office catching up on paperwork when Maria knocked on the door. You got a visitor, she said. Says he knows you. Who? She shrugged. Older guy. Expensive suit. Looks important. Ethan's stomach tightened. Graham? No, he would have called first. Then who? He stepped into the dining room and stopped dead. The man sitting in the corner booth was not Graham. He was older, maybe mid-60s, with steel gray hair and eyes that could cut glass. His suit probably cost more than Ethan's truck. And the way he sat, back straight, hands folded, completely at ease, radiated power and authority. Ethan Cross, the man said. Yeah, can I help you? My name is Richard Blackwood. I'm a regional director for several restaurant chains in this area. He gestured to the seat across from him. May I have a moment of your time? Every instinct told Ethan this was trouble, but refusing would be worse than confronting it. He slid into the booth, keeping his expression neutral. What can I do for you, Mr. Blackwood? I've been hearing interesting things about this establishment, about new management, about significant changes in a very short time. Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm always curious about success stories. We're just trying to run a good diner. Of course, but I'm particularly interested in how you achieved your position. It's quite unusual for a waiter to be promoted to management with no prior experience or qualifications. I had help, and I work hard. I'm sure you do. I'm also sure there were other factors involved. Connections, perhaps. Knowing the right people. Blackwood leaned forward slightly. You see, Mr. Cross, I'm something of a mentor in this industry. I help promising managers advance their careers. And I had a promising manager named Derek Voss who was doing excellent work here before he was suddenly let go. Ethan's jaw tightened. Derek was fired for cause. So I heard. Unfortunately, the documentation of that cause seems rather convenient. Security footage that suddenly exists. Complaints that were never acted on before. One might wonder if someone with influence decided they wanted to install their own person in that position. Are you accusing me of something? I'm simply observing that things don't add up, and I'm letting you know that I'm watching. This industry is small, Mr. Cross. Reputations matter, and right now yours is built on very shaky ground. Is that a threat? It's advice, from someone who's been in this business for 30 years. Blackwood stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Derek was my protege. I don't forget that, and I don't appreciate people who climb over others to get ahead. He dropped a business card on the table and walked out, leaving Ethan sitting there with his pulse hammering and a sick feeling in his gut. Maria appeared at his elbow. Who the hell was that? Trouble, Ethan said quietly, staring at the card. That was trouble. Ethan stared at Richard Blackwood's business card like it might burst into flames. The embossed lettering seemed to mock him. Regional Director, Blackwood Consulting Group. He'd heard that name before, whispered among restaurant workers like a curse. Blackwood was the kind of man who built empires on the backs of people he considered expendable, who saw employees as numbers on a spreadsheet rather than humans with families, and Derek had been his protege. Maria picked up the card, studied it, then set it down with deliberate care. "You need to call Graham. I can handle this." "Ethan, that man didn't come here to chat. He came here to intimidate you, to let you know he's watching and waiting for you to screw up." Her voice was urgent. "This is bigger than you. You need backup." She was right. Ethan knew she was right, but admitting it felt like admitting weakness, like proving everyone who doubted him correct. Still, pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Graham answered on the second ring. "Ethan, what's wrong?" "How do you know something's wrong?" "Because you never call during business hours unless there's a problem. Talk to me." Ethan explained Blackwood's visit, the veiled threats, the implications, the clear message that Derek's firing hadn't been forgotten or forgiven. Graham listened without interrupting, but Ethan could hear something shifting in his tone when he finally spoke. "Richard Blackwood," Graham said slowly. "I should have anticipated this. You know him?" "Everyone in the industry knows him. He's a fixer, helps failing restaurants turn around by gutting staff and maximizing profits. Very effective, very ruthless, and extremely loyal to the people he mentors." A pause. "Which means he sees your success as a personal affront." "So what do I do?" "You do nothing. You keep running the diner exactly as you've been running it. Let me handle Blackwood. Graham, I don't want you to fight my battles. This isn't your battle, Ethan. This is mine. I fired Derek. I promoted you. Blackwood has a problem with that. He can take it up with me." Graham's voice hardened. "In the meantime, you focus on your job. Document everything, every decision, every interaction, every number. If Blackwood's looking for ammunition, we don't give him any." They hung up, but the conversation did little to ease the knot in Ethan's chest. He'd known this job wouldn't be easy, but he hadn't expected to be caught in the crossfire of industry politics. Hadn't expected that doing the right thing would paint a target on his back. The next few days passed under a cloud of tension. Ethan found himself second-guessing every decision, wondering if Blackwood had eyes in the diner, if every customer could be a spy reporting back. It was paranoid and exhausting, and exactly what Blackwood probably wanted, to destabilize him, to make him question himself until he made a mistake. Maria noticed. "You're doing it again," she said Thursday morning, finding him in the office staring at spreadsheets with unfocused eyes. "Doing what?" "Letting fear make your decisions. You've been double-checking everything, questioning every call, treating this place like a minefield." She crossed her arms. "That's not the manager we need." "I'm just being careful." "You're being paralyzed. There's a difference." She sat down across from him. "Look, I get it. Some powerful guy came in here and rattled you. But you know what? Screw him. You've been doing amazing work here. The staff is happy, customers are happy, numbers are up. That's what matters, not what some bitter old man thinks about how you got here. What if he finds something? What if he manufactures a scandal? Or then we deal with it, together, as a team." Tool school. Maria leaned forward. "But we can't deal with anything if you're so scared of screwing up that you stop actually leading. You understand?" Ethan took a breath, let it out slowly. She was right. Fear was a poison that spread if you let it. "Yeah, I understand." "Good. Now come on, we've got lunch prep and you're not doing anyone any good hiding in here." The afternoon rush was steady, familiar rhythms that grounded Ethan back in the present. Take orders, deliver food, check on customers, solve small problems. This he could do. This he was good at. Around 3 p.m., a woman in her 50s entered, looked around with the careful assessment of someone evaluating rather than just observing, then took a seat at the counter. She ordered coffee and a slice of pie, and something about her presence set off alarm bells in Ethan's head. He approached with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "How's everything?" "Delicious," she said, and her voice was warm, but her eyes were calculating. "You're Ethan Cross?" His guard went up immediately. "I am, and you are?" "Margaret Chen. I'm a food critic for the Regional Dining Review." She pulled out a business card, slid it across the counter. "I've been hearing interesting things about this establishment. Thought I'd come see for myself." Ethan's stomach dropped. A food critic. Now. when Blackwood was circling and everything felt precarious. We weren't expecting a review. The best reviews are the ones restaurants don't expect. Shows what they're really like when they're not performing. She took another bite of pie. This is excellent, by the way. Homemade? Maria makes all our pies from scratch. I'd love to meet her, interview her actually, get a sense of the team here. Every instinct screamed that this was a setup, that Blackwood had sent her, that this was part of some larger strategy to discredit the diner, and by extension, Ethan. But he couldn't refuse without looking guilty, couldn't hide without confirming whatever suspicion she might have. I'll see if she's available, Ethan said carefully. Maria was less diplomatic when he explained. A food critic? Right after Blackwood shows up? That's not a coincidence. Maybe not, but we can't refuse to talk to her. That makes us look like we've got something to hide. Do we have something to hide? No, we've got a clean operation, good food, happy staff. So let's show her that. Maria studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but I'm watching her like a hawk. The interview lasted 30 minutes. Margaret asked probing questions about sourcing, preparation methods, staff training, operational philosophy. She was thorough, professional, and impossible to read. When she left, she thanked them both and said the review would be published the following week. Ethan spent the rest of the day on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But nothing happened. No dramatic confrontations, no mysterious visitors, just another day at the diner. That evening, after closing, he was doing final checks when his phone rang. Patricia. Ethan, we have a problem. His chest tightened. What kind of problem? Graham asked me to investigate Richard Blackwood. Turns out he's been making calls to our vendors, our suppliers, even the health department. He's trying to create issues where none exist, hoping something sticks. Can he do that? He's doing it. Whether it's legal is another question. Patricia's voice was grim. He's also been spreading rumors in the industry that you're incompetent, that Graham only promoted you out of pity, that the diner's on the verge of collapse. None of it's true, but mud sticks. So what do we do? Graham's handling it on his end, but you need to be prepared. Blackwood's not going to stop until he either destroys your reputation or gets bored, and he doesn't get bored easily. Ethan drove home through darkening streets, exhaustion and frustration warring in his chest. He'd tried to do the right thing, had worked harder than he'd ever worked, had poured everything into making the diner better. And now some bitter man with a grudge was trying to tear it all down because his protege got fired for being cruel. The unfairness of it burned. At home, Mia was already asleep, Mrs. Chen dozing in the armchair with a book on her lap. She woke when Ethan entered, gathered her things, and paused at the door. You look troubled, she said. Just work stuff. The kind that keeps you up at night? Yeah. She patted his arm with surprising strength. Then remember this. You cannot control what others do, only what you do. Focus on that and the rest will sort itself. Simple wisdom, easier said than done. But as Ethan lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, he tried to hold on to it. He couldn't control Blackwood, couldn't stop the rumors or the manipulation, but he could control how he responded, could keep doing good work, treating people right, building something worth protecting. The next morning brought unexpected reinforcement. Ethan arrived at the diner to find Graham's sedan already in the parking lot. Inside, Graham sat at the counter with coffee and a serious expression. We need to talk, Graham said. They moved to the office, away from early morning prep. Graham pulled out his phone, showed Ethan a series of emails. Blackwood's been busy, Graham said. He's contacted 3 of our suppliers claiming we're having financial difficulties, trying to get them to demand payment up front instead of our normal terms. He's filed a complaint with the health department about alleged violations that don't exist. And he's been calling business associates of mine, suggesting the diner is a failed investment I'm too stubborn to admit. Can we sue him? Possibly. But litigation takes time and money, and it gives him exactly what he wants, a public fight where he can paint himself as a victim standing up to corporate power. Graham set down his phone. I have a different idea. I'm listening. We don't fight him in court. We fight him where it actually matters, in the court of public opinion. We document everything he's doing, we gather statements from staff about what Derek was really like, and we tell the truth, loudly, publicly. And we make it clear that his actions aren't about protecting a colleague, but about protecting a system that allows managers to abuse employees. That's risky. He could retaliate. He's already retaliating. At least this way we control the narrative. Graham leaned forward. But here's the thing, Ethan. This only works if you're willing to be public about what happened to you, about Derek firing you, about the harassment, all of it. Are you willing to do that? Ethan thought about Mia, about keeping their lives private, protected from scrutiny. But he also thought about Maria's complaints that went nowhere, about Ryan who'd been desperate enough to steal, about every person who'd suffered under Derek's management while people like Blackwood looked the other way. Yeah, he said, I'm willing. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind. Patricia coordinated with a PR firm. Staff members gave statements, all of them choosing to participate despite the risk. Maria's testimony was particularly powerful. 3 years of documented abuse, detailed records of complaints she'd filed, her voice steady as she described what it felt like to work in fear. Graham compiled financial records showing the diner's improvement under Ethan's management, customer satisfaction scores that had climbed steadily, employee retention that had gone from dismal to exceptional, revenue increases that spoke for themselves. And Ethan wrote his own statement, sat at his kitchen table after Mia went to sleep and poured out the whole story. The night he'd helped Graham, the firing, the humiliation, the security footage that proved Derek had engineered the confrontation. He didn't embellish, didn't need to. The truth was damning enough. Wednesday morning, Graham published everything on the company website and social media, not as a press release, but as an open letter titled, When Compassion is Punished, One Employee's Story and Why We Have to Do Better. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, the story had been shared thousands of times. Other restaurant workers commented with their own stories of abuse, of managers who'd targeted them, of systems that protected bullies. Local news picked it up, then regional news. By evening, it was trending on social media. Margaret Chen, the food critic, published her review that same day. 5 stars. She praised not just the food, but the atmosphere, the clear care the staff took, the sense that this was a place where people actually wanted to work. Her final paragraph read, in an industry rife with exploitation and burnout, the Riverside Diner represents something rare, a business that treats its employees as humans first and workers second. Under new management, this establishment has become a model for what restaurants could be if we demanded better. The review went viral too, amplified by the larger conversation about Graham's letter. Blackwood tried to respond, issued a statement calling the accusations defamatory and threatening legal action. But his threat rang hollow against the weight of evidence, the chorus of voices speaking up, the undeniable pattern of protection he'd provided Derek over the years. By Friday, 3 restaurants that had contracted with Blackwood's consulting firm announced they were terminating their agreements. Industry publications ran editorials about the need for accountability in restaurant management. And Derek Voss, who'd been trying to land a new management position, found every door suddenly closed. Ethan watched it unfold from the diner, feeling like he was standing in the eye of a hurricane. Customers came in specifically to show support, thanking him for speaking up, sharing their own stories. Staff walked with their heads higher, pride replacing the defeated exhaustion that had characterized the place under Derek. Saturday afternoon, Blackwood himself appeared, not with threats this time, but with the defeated posture of a man who'd played his hand and lost. I underestimated you, he said, standing just inside the entrance. You underestimated basic human decency, Ethan replied. Thought you could intimidate me into silence because that's how it's always worked before. I was protecting someone I believed in. You were protecting a system that let you profit from other people's misery. Derek wasn't a good manager who got unlucky. He was a bully who finally got caught, and you enabled him because he made you money. Blackwood's jaw tightened. You've made an enemy today. No. You made an enemy 3 years ago when you taught Derek that cruelty was effective management. I just finally had the platform to say so publicly. Ethan held his gaze. You can leave now, and don't come back. Blackwood left without another word. Ethan watched him go, felt the tension that had been coiling in his shoulders for weeks finally release. Maria appeared at his elbow. That felt good, didn't it? Better than it probably should have. Nah, that man deserved worse. She grinned. You know what this means, right? We're going to be slammed. Everyone wants to eat at the restaurant that stood up to the industry bullies. She was right. The following week saw the diner busier than it had been in years. Lines out the door, reservations booked solid, staff working overtime to keep up with demand. It was exhausting and exhilarating and proof that doing the right thing could actually work out. Graham visited on Tuesday, sliding into his usual spot at the counter. Ethan poured him coffee without asking. "You've created quite a stir," Graham said. "We created it. I was just the face." "Don't diminish what you did. You put yourself out there, risked your reputation. That took courage." Graham took a sip of coffee. "I'm increasing your salary again, and I'm making you full manager, not assistant. The diner's yours to run, Ethan. You've more than earned it." "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep doing what you're doing. Keep treating people right. Keep building something worth being proud of." Graham smiled. "And maybe stop answering your phone at 2 a.m. when you're checking spreadsheets. You're going to give yourself a heart attack." "How do you know I do that?" "Because I do it too." Recognizes the behavior. Graham stood, left money for his coffee. "Take care of yourself, Ethan. You're no good to anyone burnt out." 3 months passed. The diner settled into a new rhythm. Still busy, but sustainably so. Still challenging, but manageably so. Ethan hired 2 new staff members, both of whom came with glowing references and genuine smiles. He implemented a profit-sharing program that gave everyone stake in the diner's success. He created an employee assistance fund for emergencies, funded by a percentage of profits. The changes weren't revolutionary. They were just decent. Treating people like they mattered because they did. On a Tuesday evening in early spring, Ethan was closing up when he noticed a car pulled over on the shoulder across the street. The hazard lights were blinking weakly, and a figure stood beside the vehicle looking lost. Ethan locked the diner, walked to his truck, and paused with his hand on the door handle. Every logical part of his brain said to go home. It had been a long day. Mia was waiting. He'd done enough helping strangers for one lifetime, but he couldn't drive past. Wouldn't. Because 7 months ago, someone had stopped for him, and that choice had changed everything. He crossed the street, approached the stranded driver. A young woman, maybe 25, with tears streaking her face and a phone with no signal in her hand. "You okay?" Ethan asked. She looked up, startled, then relieved. "My car just died. I don't know what's wrong. I have a job interview in the morning, and I can't afford a tow, and—" Her voice broke. "Hey, it's all right. Let's see if we can figure it out." Ethan popped her hood, looked at the engine with the limited knowledge he had. "Battery's probably dead. I've got jumper cables. We can try that." 20 minutes later, her car was running. She thanked him profusely, tried to offer him money he refused. "Just help someone else when you get the chance," he said. "That's payment enough." She drove off, and Ethan stood there on the shoulder, feeling the weight of 7 months compress into a single moment of clarity. This was what it was all about. Not the promotions or the success or even the justice, just this, choosing to help because you could, because it mattered, because kindness was a language that transcended everything else. He drove home through familiar streets, past the park where he'd taken Mia, past the ice cream shop, past all the landmarks of their life. The apartment was lit when he arrived, Mrs. Chen visible through the window reading to Mia on the couch. Inside, Mia looked up and smiled. "Daddy!" Mrs. Chen is reading the princess story. The one with the dragon, the one with the dragon, and the singing flowers, and the magic shoes. That's a lot of plot for one story. It's a very good story. Ethan thanked Mrs. Chen, got Mia ready for bed, read 3 more chapters because she asked with those eyes he couldn't refuse. When she finally drifted off, he sat beside her bed like he always did, holding her hand through the railings. "You know what today was, Mia Bean?" he whispered to her sleeping form. "Today was the kind of day that reminds me why everything else matters, why working hard matters, why being kind matters, because it all comes back around eventually." He stayed until her breathing was deep and even, then moved to the living room. His phone buzzed with a text from Graham. "Heard you helped a stranded driver tonight. Some habits die hard, huh?" Ethan smiled, typed back. "Some habits are worth keeping." Agreed. "Get some sleep, Ethan. Tomorrow's another day." He set down his phone and looked around the apartment. Still small, still worn, but no longer suffocating. Mia's drawings covered the fridge, photos lined the walls, evidence of life being lived, of a father and daughter figuring it out together. 7 months ago he'd been drowning, had seen no way forward, no path that didn't end in disaster. And then he'd stopped for a stranger in the rain, and everything had changed. Not because stopping had been heroic or special, but because it had been human. Had been a choice to care when caring was hard, to help when help wasn't convenient, to remember that every person you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about. Derek and Blackwood had operated from a different philosophy, that people were resources to exploit, that compassion was weakness, that the only thing that mattered was power. And for a while that philosophy had won, had flourished, had seemed unstoppable. But it hadn't been. Because eventually someone had witnessed the cruelty and decided it was unacceptable, had chosen to act instead of looking away, had used their power to protect instead of punish. That was the story Ethan would tell Mia when she was older. Not that good always triumphs or that the universe is fair. Those were lies, and she deserved better than lies. No, he'd tell her that sometimes, not always, but sometimes, when you do the right thing just because it's right, the universe notices. And sometimes it gives back. Not in equal measure, not in predictable ways, but enough. Enough to matter. Enough to make the trying worthwhile. He'd tell her that her father had once helped a stranger, and that stranger had returned the favor 100-fold. That kindness was currency more valuable than money. That treating people with dignity cost nothing and paid dividends that compounded forever. He'd tell her that the world was hard and unfair and sometimes cruel, but that within that hardness were pockets of grace, moments where strangers became allies, where justice actually prevailed, where the scared, tired, desperate choice to care made all the difference. And he'd tell her that her mother would have been proud, would have stopped for that stranger too, would have believed, as Ethan now believed, that the measure of a life wasn't in what you accumulated, but in what you gave away freely. Sarah's photo caught his eye, forever young, forever smiling, forever gone. But her influence remained, woven into every choice Ethan made, every value he taught their daughter, every moment he chose compassion over convenience. "We're okay," he whispered to the photo. "Finally, we're really okay." And in the quiet of that small apartment, with his daughter sleeping peacefully and tomorrow's challenges still distant, Ethan Cross allowed himself to believe it. The rain would come again. It always did. There would be more breakdowns, more strangers, more moments that demanded more than he thought he had to give. But he'd stop anyway. Would offer help anyway. Would choose kindness anyway. Because that's what you did when you remembered what it felt like to be helpless in a storm, waiting for someone, anyone, to care enough to pull over. You became the person who stopped. Every single time.